She strutted around like she owned the lake. I let her believe that, right up until I proved I literally owned everything underneath it. Karen Whitmore had made harassing my disabled veteran father her personal mission. Every morning she'd patrol Pine Ridge Estates in her golf cart like some suburban dictator, measuring distances, snapping pictures, and handing out fake citations like she was judge, jury, and code enforcement. The woman actually threatened to have my 72-year-old dad arrested for fishing from his wheelchair under a pop-up tent. These HOA tyrants thought they could intimidate us into abandoning public lakefront access, land my family had used for 3 generations. But Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. See, I'm an environmental consultant. I know how to read property records. And while Karen played neighborhood tyrant, I discovered something buried deep in the land deeds. My grandfather's mineral rights meant I could buy her entire neighborhood out from under her feet, and maybe even convert it into a public park. Let me back up. My name's Jake. 6 months ago, I inherited my grandfather's old lakefront cabin in Millbrook, Minnesota. It wasn't fancy, weathered cedar siding, creaky floors, but it was home, a sacred spot where 3 generations learned to fish, swim, and soak in the peace of nature. I work remotely now, consulting on environmental impact projects, which gives me the freedom to care for my father, a Vietnam vet who lost both legs to an IED in '68. Weekly fishing trips aren't just nostalgia for us, they're therapy. Doctor's orders for his PTSD, something about the smell of pine needles, the morning sun on the water, and the rhythmic motion of casting a line calms him like no medication ever has. But everything changed when Karen moved in. Millbrook Lake was always a peaceful place, half public, half private. Old-timers and newcomers coexisted just fine. Sure, there were the occasional complaints about jet skis or late-night bonfires, but nothing serious. Then the Chicago money came. Enter Linda Whitmore, though everyone just called her Karen behind her back. 52, freshly arrived from some gated Illinois suburb, armed with a developer husband and a hunger for control. Within 6 months, she'd crowned herself Queen of Pine Ridge Estates, the McMansion subdivision that replaced my grandfather's old duck hunting marsh. Karen was the type of person who measured her neighbor's grass with a ruler. She timed guest parking durations with a stopwatch. She got the weekend food truck banned for attracting undesirables. Forced Mrs. Peterson to repaint her mailbox because it was the wrong shade of blue. Petty power, straight to the head like cheap wine. Our trouble started on a crisp Tuesday in September. Dad and I had set up our regular spot at the public boat launch. Him in his wheelchair, me in a folding chair, both of us enjoying the morning chill and the scent of wet leaves. But the sun was getting harsh. So I popped up a small beach tent, the same one we'd used for years. It gave Dad some shade while we fished. 30 minutes in, I heard the sharp crunch of gravel and turned to see Karen marching toward us like a SWAT team in yoga pants, clipboard in one hand, measuring tape in the other. Dressed head to toe in a tennis outfit that probably cost more than our entire setup. "Excuse me," she barked. "This tent violates our community's visual pollution ordinance." She started measuring tent stakes like she was doing forensic analysis. I stood up. "Ma'am, this is public land. County maps are online. You can check them." Her face flushed bright red. "I don't care what some outdated map says. This structure affects property values. I have the authority to issue citations." She waved a stack of fake legal-looking papers in my face. "That's a $500 daily fine. Remove it immediately." Dad gave me that look, the one I'd seen when bullies picked on me growing up. "Don't make a scene, son." So we packed up. Karen stood there filming us on her iPhone, smug as a cat who'd caught a bird. But that night I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. So I started digging into Grandpa's old paperwork. Deeds, survey maps, mineral rights, and that's when I found it. In the dusty box of my grandfather's records, I uncovered something that would flip Karen's little kingdom on its head. It was the original land sale agreement from when Pine Ridge Estates was developed. Turns out Grandpa had sold the surface rights to that land, but he kept the mineral rights. Every inch of the valuable limestone beneath Karen's perfectly manicured lawn, still legally ours, And under most state laws, mineral rights trump surface rights. That meant, with the right permits, I could legally drill through her backyard if I wanted to. But that was just the beginning. The very next morning, I found a citation tucked under my truck's windshield wiper. Karen was back at it. Notice of environmental violation printed on what looked like official county letterhead. Unauthorized camping structure on protected lakefront property. Fine. $500. Compliance required within 48 hours or escalation will occur. Signed, Linda Whitmore, Deputy Environmental Compliance Officer. I almost laughed. There was no such position in our county, so I made a quick call. Hi, this is Jake Morrison. I'm calling about an environmental compliance officer named Linda Whitmore. Pause. Then the clerk replied, Sir, we don't have anyone by that name. In fact, we don't even have a deputy environmental compliance position. Bingo. Karen was impersonating a government official, a federal crime that carries up to 3 years in prison. But I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I quietly set up a hidden security camera near the public boat launch, camouflaged in the reeds. If Karen wanted to play pretend law enforcement, I'd be filming her greatest hits. Sure enough, the next day, she arrived in her golf cart, this time wearing what looked like a mall cop badge pinned to her chest. She strutted up to an elderly couple, slapped a citation on their windshield, and threatened to call authorities because their lawn chairs were too close to the water. Every second of it caught on camera. That same afternoon, a man named Bob approached me while I was baiting hooks. 73 years old, hands stained from decades of fish and tobacco. She's been hell on all of us, he said, casting his line. Scared Garcia's grandson so bad he won't bring the kids no more. Bob nodded toward the expensive houses across the water. Funny thing, though, your granddad always said he kept something when he sold that land, called it his insurance policy. That made my heart race. What kind of insurance? The kind you don't find unless you dig real deep. You might want to check those county records again, son. I did, and what I found next changed everything. While Karen kept escalating her harassment, I was busy peeling back layers of land records. And that's when I found it. A 1952 easement agreement. Buried beneath 40 years of tax records, it guaranteed permanent public lake access in perpetuity, and even gave my family the legal right to maintain and enforce that access. Let me say that again. Every Pine Ridge Estates homeowner had unknowingly agreed to a binding contract that I had the right to enforce. Karen wasn't just being a busybody. She was violating a covenant built into her deed. Meanwhile, her games continued. She and her husband used a contractor buddy to block public parking with cones and signs. She even hired rent-a-cops in fake uniforms to patrol the area and threaten senior citizens with citizens' arrests. But I had documentation. Unpermitted dock extensions? Check. Illegal floodlights disturbing migratory birds? Check. Filled-in wetlands without impact studies? Triple check. I filed formal complaints with the county, photos, videos, witness statements, all tied up in a legal bow. But the real ace came from my lawyer friend, Sarah. She dug deeper into Karen's husband's development company. What she found made my mineral rights look like pocket change. Jake, she told me over coffee, barely containing her excitement. They owe $847,000 in back taxes. The company's sinking, property liens everywhere, and an EPA investigation for illegal wetland destruction. And their house? It was collateral. If the business failed, Karen would lose everything. The house, the cars, even her prized golf cart patrol vehicle. That's when the 911 call happened. It was early Thursday. The phone rang. 911 received a report about 2 suspicious men with camping equipment threatening homeowners, the officer said. I froze. My dad looked up from pouring his coffee. Karen, he asked. Karen, I confirmed. We were still sitting at the breakfast table when 2 squad cars rolled into the boat launch. Lights flashing. Karen stood nearby, filming us like she'd just exposed a terrorist plot. The officer asked what we were doing. I handed over. Fishing licenses, land maps, stajaos, Dad's veteran ID. He looked it over, looked at Dad's wheelchair, our little tackle box, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you reported aggressive trespassers?" he asked. She started shrieking about illegal tents, visual pollution, unauthorized structures. But the officer wasn't buying it. His tone shifted. "Have you filed false reports before, ma'am?" Turns out he recognized Karen's name. She'd made 3 prior emergency calls, all unfounded, all targeting veterans and minorities. And now his body cam was catching it all. 20 minutes later, she was being lectured for wasting police resources. I was given the officer's direct contact card. Karen? She'd just made a fatal mistake. Karen's 911 stunt had backfired. But instead of retreating, she doubled down. 2 hours later, she hired private security, rent-a-cops, and knock-off tactical gear to patrol public property. One even tried to confiscate our tackle box, calling it abandoned equipment. That was the final straw. I served Karen with a federal cease and desist order for harassment, delivered by a process server who found her measuring a neighbor's lawn at 7 a.m. The look on her face? Priceless. But I wasn't done. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request and got every 911 call Karen made in the past year. 14 in total, targeting minorities, veterans, and working-class families. Pattern harassment. And remember the environmental violations? Soil samples I had taken confirmed her husband's company dumped illegal fill, raising the shoreline by 3 feet, stealing land from the lake, and destroying habitat. That's EPA territory now. Restoration would mean partial demolition of several Pine Ridge homes, including Karen's. While she posted fear-mongering pictures online, trying to paint us as homeless squatters, the community began to turn. Veterans groups rallied. Tourism boards expressed concern. Local businesses refused service to known harassment supporters. Even neighbors started distancing themselves from Karen's insanity. Then came the easement clause bombshell. In that 1952 document, Grandpa didn't just keep mineral rights. He was granted enforcement power over the lake access itself. That made me not just the target of Karen's harassment. It made me the legal authority she'd been defying. And here's where it gets poetic. Karen had spent months violating her own deed, under the illusion she was protecting her property values. But the truth, she was building a legal mountain of evidence against herself. And then she crossed another unforgivable line. She called ICE. The Rodriguez family, longtime lake visitors, had arrived for a peaceful fishing day. Kids, coolers, folding chairs. And Karen decided they didn't look like they belonged. She called Immigration and Customs Enforcement, all because they were Hispanic. That's when I picked up the phone and called the Department of Justice. I filed an ADA discrimination complaint, backed with social media posts, fake citations, photos, videos, and a timeline proving a pattern of abuse against a disabled veteran. While Karen ramped up her war, I was preparing for her surrender, and it came faster than she ever expected. Karen didn't realize that while she stirred up chaos online, I was making strategic phone calls that would undo everything she thought she controlled. "Hi, this is Jake Morrison. I own the mineral rights beneath a residential development. I'd like to discuss extraction options." The rep from Millbrook Limestone and Aggregate went silent, then replied, "Mr. Morrison, we'd be very interested. When can we schedule a site survey?" While Karen organized anti-access petitions and posted photos of our fishing spot labeled Vagrant Camping Concern, I met with professional geologists. They confirmed what Grandpa had always known. The limestone beneath Pine Ridge Estates was among the highest quality in the state. Estimated value $2.3 million in extraction revenue. I began surveying the boundaries. The beep of geologic equipment echoed across the water. Residents looked confused. Karen looked furious. Then came the media attention. The local newspaper ran a story about lake access restrictions. Karen's campaign, once private, went public. Veterans groups joined in. The tourism board expressed concern. 3 county commissioners received dozens of complaints. Karen wasn't just harassing 2 guys with fishing rods anymore. She was facing a public backlash. And then she did something insane. She called 911 again. Reported 2 aggressive trespassers near Pine Ridge Estates. We were sitting at home when dispatch called. "Please remain calm. Units will arrive in 3 minutes." When officers arrived, Karen was already there, standing beside her golf cart, arms crossed, recording everything. But the police weren't interested in her theatrics this time. They looked at Dad's wheelchair, our fishing licenses, my stack of documentation. The sergeant pulled me aside. "Sir, has this woman been harassing you previously?" "Yes," I said. 20 minutes later, Karen was being warned for filing false police reports. The sergeant even gave me his direct line, explaining that repeat targeting of veterans and minorities could be classified as civil rights violations under federal law. Karen had no idea she was on camera, body cam, trail cam, and security footage in dozens of incidents. But she didn't stop. She escalated. She pulled up our surveying stakes and threw them in the lake. Felony destruction of property, caught on HD trail cam footage. Then she dumped used motor oil into the water. An environmental crime. Then she tried to break into my truck. I had a GPS tracker and motion camera installed. And finally, her neighbor, Mrs. Petersons, came forward. She had secretly recorded Karen planning to frame us. Plant sleeping bags, beer cans, call the county, claim we were forming a homeless encampment. Crystal clear audio. Karen's voice. "We'll make it look like they live there. No one will question it." That was it. I had everything I needed. With every fake citation, every late-night sabotage, Karen was building my legal arsenal. She didn't just cross lines. She bulldozed through them. I had footage of her, destroying survey markers, pouring motor oil into the lake, breaking into my truck, calling ICE on a Hispanic family, bribing a county commissioner. That last one? She offered $20,000 to delay my mineral rights hearing. What she didn't know? Commissioner Bradley records all meetings. Her voice was caught, loud and clear. "I'd like to make a substantial campaign contribution if we can stall that mining nonsense." Now bribery charges joined her resume. She even launched a fake environmental group, Millbrook Environmental Protection Alliance, complete with flyers, stock images of destroyed forests, and doom-filled buzzwords. But the truth, the quarry was small-scale. It would restore illegal fill zones her husband created. The final nail came at the town hall meeting she organized. 50 residents showed up expecting lake protection updates. Instead, they got a meltdown. Karen ranted about environmental terrorists, accused my father of faking his disability, and claimed limestone extraction was a socialist plot. When Bob, the 73-year-old fisherman, calmly reminded the room that my grandfather had fished there since before Karen ever heard of Minnesota. The crowd turned. She stormed out, her support disintegrating like the fake citations she used to serve. At the county commission hearing, I presented Grandpa's 1952 easement agreement, trail cam footage of Karen committing felony vandalism, audio of her bribery attempt, environmental reports showing her husband's wetlands violations. Karen stood, screaming about conspiracies, about people like that. Her lawyers couldn't stop her. Security escorted her out. The commission voted unanimously. Permanent injunction enforcing public access, $50,000 fine against the HOA criminal referrals for Karen's actions. Her house went up for sale before the meeting even ended. 3 weeks later, the white for sale sign stood like a gravestone for her suburban empire. Karen fled to Florida, where, according to neighbors, she's already started a new HOA war. But back in Millbrook, everything changed. 5 families accepted my buyout offers, 120% market value, plus relocation assistance. The rest formed a neighborhood council to transition Pine Ridge Estates into a community-integrated lakefront. Limestone extraction began in spring, quiet, clean, and eco-approved. We generated $2.1 million in revenue while restoring the damaged wetlands. Federal grants funded native replanting. Illegal construction debris? Removed. Where Karen's golf cart once patrolled like a tank, kids now play on accessible beaches. The Veterans Memorial Fishing Pier opened, dedicated to my father's generation. His PTSD improved dramatically. Fishing became a daily ritual. My environmental consulting business exploded. Grandpa's conservation scholarship now funds veteran and student grants. His insurance policy? It became a movement. The annual Lake Access Festival brings together veterans, families, and new neighbors, all united by the belief that public land belongs to the people, And last week, I watched my dad teach our neighbor's grandson how to tie a fishing knot. Laughter, pine needles, loons calling in the distance. This is what we were fighting for. Karen tried to protect property values, but what she really did was give us the perfect opportunity to prove that community beats greed. Do you have a nightmare HOA story? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to see more victories against suburban tyrants like Karen, hit that subscribe button and join us here at HOA Karen Central, where justice is always one citation away. Because sometimes the best revenge is building something better.